You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hi, everyone. Stellar Success Podcast again. I'm Dr. Tudor Francu, and I have a great guest today, Alison Kole. How are you, Doc?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Dr. Kole, can you give us a brief retrospective blitz of your career? How did you start? What was your journey, and where are you now?
Whoa. Okay. Woo-woo. All right. So I'm going to take you back in time to when I was just a punk, even going to medical school, because I think that's sort of an interesting thing. Everybody kind of goes along their journey differently. I actually, went when I was at Barnard for my undergrad, and at that time, you actually had an opportunity. If you had some patient experience, which I did being a nursing aide over the summer prior to me even going to college, in working with patients. And there was an opportunity to work in a pulmonary function lab. And I took the opportunity right out of college and worked there for a couple of years, and then decided I wanted to head over to medical school. And for some reason, the folks over at Tufts let me in. And the rest, as they say, is history. I was really initially didn't think I'd be drawn to pulmonary medicine, but really just sort of, I think what it was is I had these wonderful mentors at Columbia, and I was like, wow, look at all these drips. Look how complicated all these folks are. I'm like, if I could do that, I'd feel like I was really a doctor. I'm going to go to medicine. I want to do that. So I had a great passion for pulmonary and critical care medicine. Was very fortunate to have met a friend of mine in medical school who's actually originally from Southern California. And she encouraged me to actually interview out on the West Coast, which was, I'm from New Jersey, and being an East Coast girl was sort of a new concept to literally leap across the country. But I was ready for that and had the good fortune to land at Cedars-Sinai, which was my number one choice. You know, in the match, we all know how important it is to match, and we get so excited about that. And it really catapulted me. I met a whole new group of folks that I'm still really tight with. We just had a reunion recently. It was so wonderful to see so many of them. We've actually lost one of them because he passed away. But it was just, a wonderful experience to train there. I got a chance to do pulmonary. And then fast forward, I started doing that and then realized, hey, one of the reasons I like pulmonary so much is because I'm so busy. I forget to pay attention to the fact that I don't sleep all that well. And a couple kids later, everything else, I started noticing just how chronically sleep deprived I'd been all these years. And found myself sort of falling out of love with pulmonary and critical care and falling in love with the concept of prevention and sleep medicine. And, through my experiences during COVID, rounding in the ICU, I think I came to the conclusion that even though I will always have an intellectual love for pulmonary and critical care medicine, it was time for me to move on. And that launched me into an independent sort of practice and moving away from sort of the standard medical model, which is where I am right now today.
That's great. That's a great journey. I like what you said about the standard medical model. And sleep is one of those things, right? Because I think over time, in general, in medical world, sleep was considered something of a second nature. I was a resident. I was given examples of successful people that, look, they don't sleep much. They only sleep 2, 3, 4 hours a day. Look how much they can do. Their brain is functioning well, and you don't need that much sleep. You can get so much done in a day, in 24 hours. And if you don't sleep, everything is gonna go exponentially in your activity. And going through residency, I have to tell you that sleep was one of my best times that I could count on. And I came to reality, years later, that if you do not sleep well, nothing goes well in your life. And I want to see your opinion on this, because the concept of sleep kind of evolved over time in the medical world. What do you think about this?
Well, first of all, your experiences in residency completely parallel mine. I can remember distinctly, feeling like I barely slept for several days on my surgical rotation when I was even in medical school. And we would compare notes almost. And you almost felt like, I actually slept for a couple of hours. So I'm sort of like the loser. I lost because I got a chance to sleep, and other people stayed up and they're like, all rah, rah, rah. And it was almost like a badge of honor how little you slept. And for me, I just would moonlight when I couldn't sleep. Like what I found was that I just would get home from, a 36-hour cycle of call, and I didn't know that you probably shouldn't get a bunch of bright light living in Southern California when you're walking home in the mid-afternoon. And gee, now I can't sleep. What am I going to do with myself? And I just be like, oh, I guess I'll study or I'll do an extra shift because I can make a few extra bucks doing some moonlighting when I was a resident and fellow. And like it didn't necessarily bother me at that age. But as I moved on toward life and I joined a very busy multi-specialty practice, ran a very successful sleep program. But, as the pulmonary critical care responsibilities that started off significant, they were like every 5-6 weeks you're on call, to now it was routinely every 4 weeks. Sometimes there was another call thrown in there, even if it was just pulmonary call, but you had to answer the pager. You might not have to take care of ICU patients, but you had to be responsible. And it was a 7-day in a row stretch. And now I'm 20 years older. I was like, you'd go into your shift. It would be the biggest joke because the nicest person in our group would be like, hey, it's okay. Like most mellow human on the planet. Started off his week. By the end of the week, I was like, oh, I'm not talking to him. Like he's in a bad mood. And I'd see myself. I was like I'm on edge. The littlest thing would make me crazy. I was snipping at everyone. I just was like, all I want to do is sleep. And then it became a progression, particularly because we moved to shift work model during the pandemic. So now all of a sudden it was like my usual routine was all out of whack. Even though I forced myself to get up early and exercise and do all the things I thought were healthy, I just found I didn't have enough gas in the tank to continue that. And it was the 12-hour shifts. And then it was like the discovering that the more I talked about sleep and how I felt so horrible because I wasn't sleeping, there were other people in my group that didn't seem to care, meaning I felt like I didn't have anybody to really talk to about it. I'd be like, the schedule isn't working for me. I'm not sleeping. And they'd be like, well, I sleep fine. Okay, do you want to rub salt in the wounds? Like I'm really suffering here. And it was like, that's just, you'll get over it. Like it's, you're making a big deal out of it. And I just noticed a decline in my ability to enjoy patient encounters. I felt like it was really hard to keep track, almost like I was, they talk about traumatic experiences and dissociating, and I'm sure there's a component of that, but almost feeling like I was in this weird bubble, like what just happened? Oh, that just happened. Like I was functioning, but not really present. That really impacted. My kids were toddlers at that time, and I really felt I couldn't be present for them. Like they kind of almost got in the habit of mommy needs to go shower. Don't touch mommy. No hugs for mommy. No kisses for mommy until she's gotten the COVID off of her body. Then she can come talk to you. And you don't realize when they're so impressionable just how challenging, they start to kind of see you in a different way. And they started having behavioral problems because mommy wasn't around to police them. And grandma was, but grandma's grandma. Grandma's like, that's not my responsibility. I'm fun grandma. You've got to be the mom. And I just found things escalating to the point where I was not finding joy in the work. And I just dreaded it. I would literally be like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do this again. And then I just thought to myself, is this really what I suffered through? Like I went through med school and residency and 2 fellowships and I hate my life? What? I started this and I was like the most excited. You see them all the time, the med students, and they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and they got that big smile on their face. And I'm like, I almost like miss that. I'm like, oh, they're like a bright, shiny copper penny. And I'm like the old one that you picked off the ground and it's all, tarnished and, you could barely, it's got all the signs of wear and tear on it. So I knew for me, it was so powerful that I was not sleeping and I saw it impact every aspect of my life. What happened is that I can speak to you now, having transitioned, literally, I had my anniversary, October 2022. It's October 2024. So I'm officially out of that standard system, that call schedule, all of it. And I'm not kidding you, I am a different person. I just came back from CHEST 2024. And to see colleagues that I have not seen, some of them since fellowship, and to reunite with them, and they're like, Alison, you look so happy. You're like glowing. Like, what's going on? I'm like, I sleep. Literally, I was just like, I sleep. I have a regular schedule. I don't feel on edge all the time. And I'm choosing to use my medical knowledge in a way I think is really impactful for me. This is what I feel my calling is. I would see the same patients asking the same questions, and I'm able to do something different now with my career. So for me, it started off with getting rid of that sleep deprivation, getting a routine. I mean, it's just that basic and foundational. That is how important sleep is to the quality of our lives.
Yeah, I actually want to ask you about what do you encounter in your practice? Because, recently, I think sleep quality got a lot more attention to the medical world. And not only the number of hours that we sleep, but how do we sleep and what kind of sleep do we have? What do you see in your practice with patients in general? What is the trend out there? Because I know there are a lot of devices right now. They can measure the sleep quality. They can measure how long you sleep, what kind of activities you had before you went to sleep, and what kind of outcome do they have. What do you see in your practice regarding these things?
Yeah. So what I would say is, in general, sleep duration, I think, has been slightly overemphasized in media, because we're all getting 10 to 30 second sound bites of what's normal, right? So I've actually seen in my practice a lot of people, not that they feel that they're sleeping badly, but because the media is telling them that you're not getting enough sleep, they come and see me and feel like self-critical, like, well, I'm hearing over and over again that I'm not getting enough sleep. I want to live longer. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not getting enough sleep? And I'm like, whoa. Let's take a step back. Let's look at exactly what the data shows, and it's a population-based data. And let's talk about this concept, and I've read it in books that are really about nutrition, that are like, but sleep is important and you better get your 8 hours because everything's going to go to hell if you don't. The reality is that there's wiggle room, 7 to 9-ish for most people, though some people do tend to be around the 6-hour mark and are naturally shorter sleepers. And now we know that there's some genetic tendency for some people to be shorter sleepers. Really below 6 hours is where we start to get more concerned. But also, too, is if you're sleeping longer than 9 hours and you need like 10, 11 hours consistently. I think the question there ultimately becomes, are you an athlete who really needs a ton of sleep because you're burning that much energy during the day? Or is there something else going on? Like, are you having other symptoms? Because too long a sleep tends to leave us shorter on the planet as well. So it's too short, too long. But again, there's all sorts of areas of gray in terms of duration, right? And so teasing out, are there other symptoms associated with you sleeping for a long time? Like, can you not keep your eyes open during the day? Do we need to think about a disorder of hypersomnia that's rare, like narcolepsy or idiopathic hypersomnia? That's one extreme. And then you just have the extreme of chronic sleep deprivation. And also the number of hours you require will vary according to your age, right? So if we're looking at adolescents and teenagers, there is an absolute epidemic of sleep deprivation in that group. Literally, the statistics are staggering. It's like 80% of teens are not sleeping enough. The numbers are almost as high in adolescents, along the order of anywhere between 60 to 80%, depending on what literature. It's nuts. These are developing brains, right? So it does depend. But you brought up another point, which is the sleep quality, right? So the quality aspect of it is, are you sleeping and then you're kind of staying asleep? Do you feel refreshed when you wake up? Those things really matter. And then you have consistency. That's another thing that's this year has become emphasized in literature, which is the more consistent your sleep schedule is, as opposed to being all over the place, that tends to portend a longer, sort of healthier life as well. So there's several aspects of it. I think what I see in clinical practice is a lot of people who may actually be chronically sleep deprived, and we try to work through ways for them to expand that. A lot of people are waking up in the middle of the night and then they have trouble getting back to sleep. So that's basically sleep maintenance insomnia. What's the cause of that? Believe it or not, I find an awful lot of sleep apnea, and that is the only symptom, especially for my perimenopausal ladies or younger ladies. That tends to be really, really common for them to present. And, I do see a lot of people sleeping but feeling unrefreshed, and even mild sleep apnea can contribute to that. Some people, if you check their home sleep apnea test, which we know has limitations in terms of accuracy, in terms of defining, as we define it now, how many events per hour, mild, moderate, severe sleep apnea, people can be relatively mild, but be very, very, very symptomatic. And I've treated those patients and they felt considerably better. I also think the other thing I see a lot of is this concept of, they call it orthosomnia, where you're mentioning all of these tools that we have to monitor our sleep. The tools are almost taking over for people's perception of what their sleep quality is. And the reality is that it's just a number. And if you really look at a lot of these devices, now there's some newer devices that are getting approved by the FDA and saying, oh, this might detect sleep apnea, this might help you with that. But if you're looking at sleep architecture, not even a home sleep apnea test that's approved by the FDA really can give you a good measure of your sleep architecture. Really, it's a polysomnogram. So these devices are spitting out information. People are taking it as like gospel. And in reality, this is just an algorithm and it's giving you sort of a sense. So if you're perceiving you're sleeping really well and you're curious, really these commercial products are kind of for entertainment purposes only, right? So they're not really taking ownership of making you feel nuts about your sleep. But a lot of people perceive that like, well, my Whoop is telling me this, or my Fitbit's telling me that, or my Oura Ring's telling me that. And it's like, yeah, but stop with all of that. How do you feel? And look for trends. I don't discount that there's some utility to this information. But there actually, where was I reading this? An article came across, I want to say it was in my email, but it was, from the ASM, I believe. I don't want to get in trouble, so don't quote me on that. But I do recall seeing an article where they looked at insomnia patients and they actually found that if they use some of these devices, Like it kind of skewed their perception of their insomnia. So we just got to be cognizant of the fact that we may potentially be doing more harm than good, depending on the personality and that type of patient. Though I do find it somewhat useful.
Yeah, it's definitely a trend, I would say, with those devices. And I had an experience on my own that I had amazing scores in my device, and I could wake up. I was like so tired after that night. I was like, I had the worst sleep. Let me see what my score is. And my score was 95. And I was like, that's not possible. And I also had the same reverse experience where I slept like a baby the whole night, and my score was very low. And I was like, this is not right.
You're the classic example. So, it can make us sort of like, oh my goodness, what does this data really mean? Sometimes it means a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah,
honestly.
Exactly.
So, see how you feel, but also if you know consistently, like you're saying, for example, even if you got a wonderful score, if you're tired and it's like all the time and you're getting like pretty sufficient hours for you, and that may, like I said, it may look different. If you're a person who needs 9 hours and you only sleep 7, you may always feel tired. Think about things like sleep apnea or restless legs or something else going on that is actually medically treatable. Because you could be amazed and people get nervous about it, but there's so many new options coming down the pike, and it's a really exciting time in the field of sleep medicine, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to switch gears a little bit on yourself as a professional.
Sure.
What do you think success means for you?
Success has changed as I've aged. And I think for me, if I had to share with anyone what that is, I really perceived success when I was that undergrad, hoping and praying I'd be the first person to go to medical school in her family, and it was going to be like, this is going to be amazing. I get to do that doctor thing I always wanted to do, and my parents will be so proud. That was success at that time. And I achieved that. And then it became, well, if I could be the best pulmonary critical care doctor I could possibly imagine, if I could give 150% to my patients and get them better and really feel like I have mastered this level of attendinghood, that was success. And then it was, hey, you can run a sleep program and build it. And I'm like, that's successful. Then I had a paycheck that I liked in addition to that. Oh, that's success. And then what I realized is none of that was really success. Or maybe that's what motivates us, or that's the carrot that we dangle in front of ourselves to get to the next step. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when. And I had everything on paper. I had always thought as a kid that I would make me happy. And I was miserable. So what the hell? And then I realized, you know what? What success to me is I don't have to be the person getting the awards. I don't have to be in every place. My career doesn't need to be the most successful it will ever be. I enjoy what I do. I have a very flexible, actually sort of do a mixture of continuing medical education development by day. And then in the evenings, I see patients. And so I have a mixture of a clinical practice that is very heavily sleep focused now. And I'm at a place in my life where I'm okay with that. I'm okay taking off the pulmonary critical care gloves. The educational aspect of it allows me to reach folks that are healthcare providers, like I'm talking to you, but also I can see patients. And then I was able to start a podcast where I can talk about general sleep education that's available to healthcare providers and patients alike, and to anybody who's interested in sleep. And do I make as much money? No. Am I as busy? No. Do I sleep well? Yes. And do I have time for my kids? Am I going to take a trip to Disney because my daughter got invited to perform with her dance team this weekend? Yes. And I did not have to plan it 6 months in advance and I didn't have to have somebody yelling at me that my patients are mad because I need to be rescheduled because I needed to do something for my family. For me, that is what I need in my life right now. Maybe when my kids are older, they don't need me as much. I may perceive a different need, or my goals may change. Am I healthy when I've had friends who have not been healthy, who have been young and died and had led very stressful lives in the healthcare field? Yes. So for me, my definition of success is that I feel like I want to continue on the planet every day, and I find a reason to be grateful every day, even when my day is crazy. And believe me, no matter what you do, you're going to have busier days. You're going to have, ebbs and flows. I've had a very busy week, but I'm grateful for that busyness. That to me is success.
Yeah, it looks like you mastered the the definition of success in terms of how you deal with failures. And I think one of the most important things that a successful person like yourself has is like you said, being grateful for what you have and take the failures or the step backs as a reason to move forward. Can you give us an example of something like that that kind of set you back or didn't pan out?
The bottom line is that I imagined my career as being in, sort of growing and expanding a sleep program that I had built from the ground up. It wasn't mine. It was a program I built for an organization, and realizing that it was time to start over, that I was no longer going to continue on that trajectory for growth. It's funny because you ask about that setback. Yes, it was a setback, and that choice to say, I'm not going to continue in this incredibly successful practice where I am earning my keep and I work very hard, but I am compensated for that, right? I guess you could look at it as a setback or failure. But it's funny because when I look at it as just me evolving. It no longer suited me. And I don't see it, maybe it's that I don't see it as being a failure, though I assure you there will be people who have the viewpoint that it probably is, if they're outsiders looking in. But it's not about them. It's about me and my perception. And my perception is I'm doing what I need to do. I do find that transitioning out of a traditional medical model, it is more challenging to build a patient base of people that work with you when you're out of network, especially when you're providing out-of-network sleep services. So that is a slow, steady increase. It's very incremental. And, that for somebody who's a critical care background, right, we tend to not be as patient as we go into critical care. I want my labs and my CT scan and all that good stuff back right away. I would say that's a setback because I'd love for it to grow faster. But at the same time, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and it's slow and it's okay. And I've actually kind of grown into the continuing medical education world, and I've grown attached to the people I work with. I truly feel that like I have people that got my back. We do work in a team environment where I really truly feel like it's a team, whereas I didn't necessarily feel that same team camaraderie or that security in my old practice. It felt like I was working amongst teammates who were really kind of doing our own thing, whereas this really feels like if I have a question or an issue, I go to someone, we work through it, we figure out a way to make it better. So that's been really fun. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about your perception, right? And I truly believe that even if there's a no, didn't get that interview or didn't get that position I thought I wanted, it's not so bad. It's okay. It's okay that I've been told no before. I thought I'd maybe want to take a foray into the pharmaceutical industry and have not found that that's been, kind of fruitful for me. Like, that's just not where I am at. But honestly, I couldn't do my podcast. Probably couldn't do some of the volunteer work I do with the ASM because of conflicts of interest. I still can do all of those things because I'm not in the industry. Is that bad? Is that really a setback? It's all about your perception. It really is.
Yeah, and perception and seeing the big picture of your life, and where you want to go. Speaking of that, if you would look back to yourself, finishing residency, and knowing what you know right now, what would you change?
Oh, that's such a good question. What I would change is this. It took me a very, very long time to accept that I don't have to be as hard on myself as I've been. Because when I was hard on myself, thinking I had to do better, I had to be better, I had to be more perfect, that translated to everything else I anticipated other people need. I held other people to this sort of impossible standard. And I think at the end of the day, where it comes from is I really never wanted to feel like I disappointed anyone. That sense of being a people pleaser. I definitely think I had that's been something that it's taken me 45 years to get a clue about. And I'm like, you know what? It would have been really nice if this happened in like my late 20s and early 30s. That would have been great. I think that'd be the thing looking back, because when you're so worried about people pleasing and saying yes all the time and making yourself nuts because you want to shine and you want to be respected in your field, you lose sight of other things because you're so wrapped up in like, oh, no, I've got to take more on. I'm Superwoman. No, I'm not. I'm just a regular person, and I'm perfectly okay now with that. But it was just a perspective I didn't have. But maybe that's my journey. Maybe that's my journey on life, is to need to go through all these permutations. So I finally come out the other end going, oh, I finally got it. And I do have friends who got that a long time ago. I'm not going to be envious of them. Maybe their journey is to learn something else that I know already. I think we all have our unique journeys. I think my I think the trajectory of my future probably would have been a little different if I was like that, but I'm okay with how it's gone so far.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great perspective. And I do think that you mentioned this now, and I do think that a lot of people are trying to model or get into the tracks of their peers and model what they're doing. And I think definitely we each have our own path and our own journey. And I think we need to say no more to stuff that comes into your life at any point and kind of follow your guts and follow your goals individually. And you mentioned something interesting that you got out of the traditional model of medical system. And I know a lot of people out there in healthcare that they want to either retire, they want to do something else. They're burned out. They're fed up. But they don't have any income and they don't know what to do. They don't know anything else to do. How would you approach this in your life, respective to your sources of income financially to be secure if you don't want to practice?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with when you are actually having income, right? Don't subscribe to the golden handcuffs. I, having come from what I came from, am extremely lucky to know the value of every dollar and every penny. Yet, by some grace of God, I don't know why my brain is wired this way, but I'm just going to say I'm appreciative of it. I always kept in mind, I'm like not so conservative that I'm like, I can't live my life. And I'm not so conservative that everything is about every dollar and every penny, that I'm paralyzed by the fear of not getting that paycheck. I think that does happen to some of us. But one of the things I saved, I only, bought what I needed. I knew, as long as I felt like my family was secure, I always made sure to take advantage of the 401k and other things that were available to me. And I really was like, okay, I will get this. That'll be a little something for myself. If I needed to do something on the house, new windows, etc., I would work with my husband and say, okay, what do our finances look like? Where, we can afford this, but it still gives us this big, big nest egg. We chose around the pandemic, and I was a little after the pandemic, like 2022, when I was making the transition to, actually 2021, I think is when we bought the property. I decided to get involved in a property that was very inexpensive to purchase. It was even more inexpensive if I had done that a few years earlier, but I was getting in at the right point. It was a fixer-upper property. We have now fixed it up. It is now a source of rental income. So I'm diversifying my portfolio. So I'm getting some rental income from that. Now we're actually thinking of perhaps listing it and putting it on the market, where I would then invest the earnings from that into something else. So we're basically, my husband and I have diversified our portfolio because we have our investments, we have our 401k, we don't overspend. I don't need a fancy car. I'm perfectly happy, driving my Mustang from 2009 that I bought with my my residency and fellowship moonlighting money. Still love that car. The Mustang is awesome. It still purrs like a kitten. We don't live frugally. We live our lives, but we don't live lavishly either. So that's one angle. The other thing that I do with my continuing medical education job is that I don't count, I never really stopped practicing because I'm still at an age where I'm not toward full retirement age, right? So I do want to still work, but I would never give up board certification. I maintain those. I always keep my eye on the pulse if there's something where I'm like, do I want to go back to clinical practice? Would there be something that was more outpatient based? Would that be something that I would consider? I don't write anything off. I love sleep medicine. It is truly my passion. Hence the name of my Sleep is My Waking Passion podcast. I mean that with my heart and soul. So I still see patients, even if it's slow going or, slow growing. It's okay. I continue to network, meet with folks. I met with a physical therapist who also has an out-of-network practice, and we really clicked. And I'd like to, work with him to see some of his patients and help them out in the sleep world. So you start to leverage your connections and grow and build. And then there's other things you can do. The podcast kind of showcases what I do. So that's my little ability to advertise, if you will, while still kind of maintaining integrity with the message that I'm trying to give. So there's lots of little ways to do that. So, and then the CME gives me an opportunity to network in a different way, because not only am I creating programs, but I'm also networking with people across different pharmaceutical companies who then know who I am, different key opinion leaders in different spaces who then know who I am. And so you just build and build that network. It's not, an immediate return on investment, but like I said, part of it too is I've got a partner in crime. And I firmly believe that we have a solid relationship. And he is doing very well in his position. He has moved into he's a physician as well, and he's moved over to a pharmaceutical industry type of role. And so we're at a place where I could relinquish some of the control that I had. Like I had to be the girl breadwinner. I'm like, okay, I can take a step back. Sean can take over for a little bit. And we work together and we work in conjunction with each other. So I do think it's really important to mind what you're making now so that you can decide if there's other choices. Is it real estate? Is it some other adventure, or venture that you decide that you want to invest in? Do you want to start your own company? Do you want to do something where you have your own little private practice? All of mine is telemedicine. So, and I combine forces with Oak Health Center. They do get a percentage of the, but they help me in terms of making sure my patients are scheduled. It's very important for my patients to get a VIP level experience when they're communicating with the staff. The staff is wonderful. That's why I chose to partner with them. I like complicated patients who have a lot of difficulty wrapping their head around what's going on with their sleep. Oak Health Center is right for that because it's a mental health organization and they deal with a lot of complicated patients. So I found the right partner for me. I also believe in their mission. So that may not be as exciting as some people do in terms of their investment experience, but it's been really a great ROI to think about some vacation rental stuff. That for me, I think gave me the confidence that I could do other things and that it was gonna be okay. And it was worth it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a great mindset right there, to create those passive income streams from investments and different things. How can someone know more about what you're doing and get in touch with you?
Please, if you are interested in sleep in any way, check out my podcast, Sleep is My Waking Passion. It's available on YouTube. It's available on Apple and Spotify, etc. I also have a website, askthe-sleepmd.com. And you can message me. There's a link in there, and I'm happy to take any email requests if you're interested in being on the podcast. If you just have a question for me, I am always available and interested in meeting new people and talking about sleep and collaborating as well. So I'm around. You can find me. You can also email me if you want at alison.kole@oak.care.
That's great. Well, Dr. Kole, thank you so much for being here. I think audience got some good nuggets out of your exposure to medicine and your successful practice. So thank you very much. And I think we're going to have to circle back at some point to see how
things are going.
Evolves.
See if I still have a smile on my face. 100%. No problem. Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.